it to hell. Rubber and ivory children fell. Britain snatched Nile, France took the West. Germany grabbed land like it passed a test. No language in common, just rule and divide. Fed us their flags, made us swallow our pride. They taught us to hate what we saw in the mirror. Now we pray to their gods just to feel clearer. Hey, we weren't even there. Split the bloodline. Hey, names not our own. Borders like chains. Borders like chains. Still today, we carry the pain. Who gave them the right? Responsibility. Who let them rewrite? Not our bodies cold. Who drew the line? Through our soul. Colonial goals. What they stole, we'll reclaim whole. We are the story they try to control. But memory's a drum and truth don't sleep. Our roots run deep where their cuts ran steep. Now we rise with fire in our name, burning their maps, reclaiming our flame. Burning their maps, reclaiming our flame. You carved us up. We rise again. One Africa. Yeah.
Okay, greetings, everybody. Welcome to another Alkebulan Awakening series in collaboration with Kumbukeni. My name, as always, is Oladile Dosumo. I'm the founder of the Emerging Alkebulan. And as always, guys, for you know what to expect on this platform, we're about decolonizing our minds and awakening our consciousness. And to start with today, I'm going to say, Africa, we need to unite. The bickering, the calling out, all the shenanigans that's going on the continent today needs to stop, because our weakness is fueling and allowing the enemies to infiltrate us. Guys, welcome. Buntu.
Greetings, habari gani, karibuni, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. What's the news? Welcome and thank you for being with us. That is Ubuntu, otherwise known as Kiswahili. Yes, the name is Nduku. I'm the host on Kumbukeni. Always happy to be with my brother on these collaborative sessions because they promote the idea of communal building. We just cannot do this as individuals. We can't continue upholding this individualistic way of moving. And yes, we must burn their maps and reclaim our way. In every way you can interpret that statement. There's no restructuring. There's no reforming. There's no anything that does not address the roots and burn them will not work. And we will see how that relates to the conversation today. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Asante.
Okay, guys, as you can see, I guess the Dr. Baba Buntu. Baba Buntu, can you please introduce yourself to our audience, please? And then we can take it from there, sir.
Very warm greetings to the emerging Alkebulan family. I am Baba Buntu, Sanbunani, Dumelang, Ekale. Blessings to the hosts and to everyone who's tuning in for righteous messages and truth about a continent that has been so mystified and misrepresented. And we are here to set that record straight. I'm very honored to be invited. Thank you so much. Ashe.
Thank you very much, my brother, man. Okay, guys. What we're gonna start with today, our guest is we're gonna go through, because there's a lot of Afrophobia going on our continent today. So we're gonna start with that. With our guest is gonna take us through some slides, and then we're gonna interject. But just bear with us as we go through this, yeah. So we're gonna go into the slides, and then we set the stage for the conversation that's coming up today. So yeah. My brother, should I bring up the slides now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, sisters and brothers, we are going into a complicated conversation. We are going to talk about, or complex, let me call it complex. We are going to talk about African manhood. But just before we do that, I know a lot of people have questions, and because of the horrible images you have seen online and on TV screens from what is happening in some places by some people across some parts of the country. And I keep saying some because we very easily gravitate as a people towards huge concepts. We say Nigerians are like this, South Africans are doing that, the mindset of Kenyans are like that. And there's nothing like that. We can never, ever say anything like that. So let's just get that out of the way before we go into this. So the first 3 or 4 slides is about the question that many people have. Are South Africans xenophobic? And if so, what are South Africans doing at this point? And this is now I'm just listing a few things that people are saying and concerned about, both in the country and around the world. And it's often alleged that South Africans are anti-African, they are self-hating, they think they are better, they're scared of white power, they're ignorant and violent, and they've forgotten history. And I would say that all these aspects exist in South Africa. That doesn't mean that all South Africans are like this. It doesn't mean that the horrible images we see of violence that is actually happening in some places in South Africa is representative of what South Africans must do. But it is a very disturbing problem. And for me, it's not a South African thing, but of course it blows a bit up, particularly in South Africa. And maybe I don't have time to go into the conversation about why that is, because we live on a continent where violence by Africans towards other Africans is quite prominent in many parts of the world. And we don't seem to focus so much on that. We don't talk so much about Congo. We don't talk so much about Sudan. We don't talk so much about what's happening in other places in Africa. And that's a concern to me. But let's stick to this. So I have 3 slides that I want to share, and this is not to excuse, not to say we must understand, but I think I want to try to bring some light to a problem, a challenge that it has so many dynamics to it and often is simplified. So let me try in a very brief way. The inequality terror of South Africa, and I call it inequality terror because South Africa is one of the world's most unequal societies. So we live with that in South Africa, and we are getting used to that. There's 40% poverty, 35% unemployment, and there are many communities where unemployment is up to 60 and 70%. The economic growth stands at 0.7%. I'm just shedding this to kind of give a little bit of a background to some of the disparities and the very horrible problems that South Africans are facing on a daily basis. And remember, the background of what I'm saying now is also that South Africa is seen as the place to be. A lot of people want to go to South Africa. Within the continent, going to South Africa means something more than just to go to a geographical space. So I'm also trying to give a little bit of context to those opposite realities. There's a terminal form of colonial legacies. Injustice has become a norm. And I want you to just understand how deeply that sits within each South African and in very many different ways. Also, we sit with, so just to give an example, as we came out of apartheid, 93, 94, you might remember the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which was instituted to kind of create a sense of forgiveness and shedding of the past and embracing the new. But basically what happened in that is that it was demonstrated very, very clearly that if you are white and you have committed atrocities, you will walk free. You will be okay. Nothing really bad is going to happen to you. And I want you to understand how huge that symbolic effect is, because in that process, it is demonstrated 100% you cannot touch white power. And as it replicates itself in different ways, you have heard about the establishment of Urania, a whites only city. And many people from outside say, but how can you allow that? Because white power has been instituted the way it has. And also linked to that, of course, also Black power then has also had to tone down its power. So it doesn't really exist other than slogans and fists in the air and marches. The second slide I want to go to is about the Black rage in South Africa. Where does this rage come from, and where are these images of people who often say, when you see it out of context, quite horrible things, even about other African people? And it's important to, I'm trying to give a little bit of nuance to the layers here. So here are four voices that are enraged in South Africa. And I'm talking about Black people now. The victims of abject poverty, those who are so squeezed to the margin that every single day is just a big question mark about survival, about opportunities, about eating, about getting a good night of sleep. Those things are absolutely not guaranteed, and most of the time not given. In many of the communities where this is experienced, there is also a pressure point of other people who come into those spaces because they are more informal. There's not so many papers that you need to sign. There's not so much control. And that makes it easier for somebody who have ill intentions to establish themselves in a new society when they come from outside of the country. What I'm trying to say is that those sub-segments of people who come from other places on the continent who are invested in criminal activities, this is a good place to start to kind of hide, to not be seen, to not be under the surveillance of places which are much more monitored. And that also means that directly in communities like that, you will have the experience of not having food, not having opportunity, not having a job, but seeing somebody from another African place coming in, and 3 weeks later they seem to have a car, they seem to be able to pay people to work for them. And that seems like there is an issue with those who are coming into the places. So that's one rage that is boiling. Another one is that, and I think this is almost all Black South Africans, there's a sense of disgruntledness and marginalization, which is very real. Of course, it sits differently with different people based on where they live, what kind of family they are from, where in the country they are, all of that. But there is a boiling underlying anger for all the layers of injustices that have been placed on this country for generations. Like, not being angry and being content is an anomaly. It hasn't been in most families and clans and communities for a very, very long time. And that doesn't mean that everyone is walking around being incensed and angry, but it takes a small issue to explode that anger. You've seen it in other forms of violence in this part of the world as well. Violence against women, violence against men, violence across language lines, so many different formats that this rage can take. Then on top of that, there's populist leadership. There's a number of leaders who understand that this squeezing of people against each other, and if you can bring in even the term foreigner, this seems to work. So now there are people who rise to leadership because they seem to be speaking a good language. They seem to be calling it what it is. And remember, we're sitting with, I mentioned this in the last slide, that we're also sitting with a Black leadership, which is very corrupt, that has inherited and continues to live and rule by many apartheid-infested dynamics. So when there are people, so people are giving up on the leadership that they're supposed to follow, meaning the politicians, the government. Now there are these populist leaders that come in and say, it's not right that people don't have jobs. We're going to get you jobs. These people must go. And in that moment, it seems like these people are talking the truth. So you will lean into that because you are no longer looking to government for truth. You're no longer watching television to get news that are accurate. So there is a number of people who will listen to those voices and choose those people as their leaders. Then in addition to that, there's something I would want to call disconsciousness, the opposite of consciousness. take this back to the ontological rut that colonialism and apartheid constitutes, meaning this completely breaking of meaning, this complete breaking of spirit, matter, life, being alive, understanding yourself, understanding the world around you. It is completely broken. And then in that, you will have younger people who sit behind. Social media is a huge factor in this as well, as it is with many other forms of violences and hate around the world. And in South Africa is no different. So there will be people who spew up a lot of these confrontational messages and say, we're going to get you. Yeah, we are not scared. And in that, as you know, in the virtual space, certain people become heroic because of how violently they speak, how dominating their voices are. And what I'm trying to say is that in between all of this, there are some people who then break out in an explosion of hatred. And as African people, we know that white power cannot really be touched. That's what we've been taught. That's what we see. That's what the institutions we go to when we study, when we work. We learn this every single day. So it's also a brainwashed reality that it's easier to attack somebody who looks like us than those who actually have enslaved us. This is a huge and it has a conversation, and it has many layers. I think I will stop here for this particular topic. But as you can see, there's so much more that needs to be added to this picture. What I'm trying to do is just to give a little bit of a nuance to the fact that this is not something that South Africans are doing as a people. I'm trying to say that there's different forms of rage, disgruntlement, confusion, anger, rage. And in some corners, in some places, this is then pushed in such a way that it becomes an explosion towards people. And then completely insane statements are made. Nigerians must leave. I mean, you might have even heard that Black South Africans have been violated because they looked a certain way. They were suspected to be from another part of the continent. So it's really insane. But at the same time, it really speaks to the lack of leadership, the lack of decoloniality that is absolutely needed, and the lack of African-centered values, education, learning, and leadership. I will pause that conversation there unless my hosts want to bring in a comment or two. And then when I know if they do, I will continue with the presentation. Let me know what you would like me to do.
As Oladele goes, because I let him go first, Baba Buntu, could you please quickly show the second and first slide while he's speaking? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that's the first one.
Yeah, that was the first one where I just spoke about what is often seen and commented about South Africa from outside. Then I looked at the various forms of inequity and inequality that is very systemic in South Africa. And then I spoke about different aspects of Black rage. And then I spoke about why are Africans being attacked.
Asante.
Okay, personally, I think I'll let you carry on because basically you've broken it down. I think this is basically the best and clearest explanation that I've seen so far. Trying to break it down so for us to get the nuance of what's going on. So I'm going to leave you there. I've got no questions. Unuko, have you got any questions?
I do. Comments, questions. If my comments inspire answers, yes, please. Regarding the popularist leadership, the thing we must ask ourselves is who's popularizing them, right? Who's paying them so that they can be in that position of popularity and influence? And what is their agenda? This conditioning of the African to accept the myth that white power cannot be touched. How do we uncondition? How do we correct that so that they can understand that, yes, it can be touched, and in fact, it must be touched for Africanness to survive and to be able to live well. And then the Truth and Reconciliation Community, I am so glad, Baba Buntu, that a South African has finally said, I think Mama Kanyisile has spoken on this as well, but you said it the best way that it must be said. It set a precedent legally under this legal system that we operate under, where precedent is so important. It legally set a precedent that whiteness cannot be touched, that whiteness can walk away no matter what it does to blackness. And the evidence that was presented at that commission was so bad. The things they admitted to that they did, the fact that it was let go. If you and I urge everyone that's listening to go and read about that commission and what was presented and the evidence. And we watched a film recently that covers it. Literally, the white soldiers were coming on and said the things that they did to Africans. Some white farmers were coming on and saying the things that they did, horrible things. The fact, and this is why I say Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and every black person that was involved in that betrayed our people.
Yeah,
and this is why I say they are the enemy, because they know they betrayed the people and yet they did it. And the shameful part is they attached the principle of Ubuntu with it.
Thank you.
Corrupting Ubuntu.
Absolutely.
Because Ubuntu would have definitely held those white people accountable for the presentations that they made. So I don't know if we'll get to, at the end, talk about that, but that, I think you need to come back for us to have a session on that, just that, and what it means and what we must do to correct that error, because that's a huge error. And if for those of you listening, if you think that this is only about South Africa, no, it set a precedent for all of Africa, including Haiti, including Brazil, including Black Americans. That decision then, that action set a precedent for all of us as far as how our bodies can be dealt with. So thank you so much, Baba Buntu.
Thank you so much for that input, Sizindugu. And I think it's important just to add that to that as well, that in the aftermath, I mean, there are some critical voices, and especially now, but for a very long time, the aftermath of TRC was that this was so great. This was so beautiful. This is the definition of how we must deal with this. Other countries must come on board. This must be done. And it was almost like having a critical voice to that, you would just drown. So it has also been seen, even in the aftermath, as a very idealistic way of doing it. And again, like you said, it really, really demonstrates what's the value of Black life and Black death. I will then proceed to the main topic today, and I will try to draw a little bit from what I shared under the topic of Afrophobic violence. And my host, you have given me a big topic. It's not a 2-minute topic, so I will try my best to race through, and then you will pick up.
No, take your time. Take your time. Sit with the ancestors on this one. Yes, take your time,
please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we are going into the topic of patriarchy, misogyny, and we want to get to how do we build powerful African men. So we are talking about things that often are labeled gender politics. We're talking about power. We're talking about family, I would say. We're talking about culture. We're talking about economy. We're talking about so many different things. And I think that's a mistake we often do when we talk about African men and African women too. So let me just say as a precursor that where I do not speak so much about African women, it's not because that is not an important conversation, but it is to try to be zoning in on the topic of today of African men. But just before I go, I think we cannot even be African men unless we mirror ourselves with African women and vice versa. So just so you know, that's where I'm coming from. The identity. So I want us to start with the identity and meaning of being an African man. And I'm doing this because the reason I started a platform called Shabaka Men of Africa together with a number of other young men many years ago here in South Africa was that I came across a lot of African men who asked a very similar question. What does it mean to be an African man? And that topic, that term, meaning, what is the meaning of being an African man? So we need to also ask, is it meaningful for men to be men? And I think there's a number of existential questions that many African men for a long time have asked within themselves, but now are also beginning to ask in different ways more publicly. Am I who I'm supposed to be? Am I experienced as a meaningful man? What am I expected to be? Do I bring honor to my family? Can I be who I intuitively actually feel I am? And many of us, to the last question, we think we cannot. Because manhood feels like and is presented as a very narrow, boxed identity. And either you fit in or you don't. And the criteria are very few, and you need to score very high on all of them. Otherwise, your manhood is questionable. It probably isn't present. And we as a society have almost the right to mock you or come for you or say things to you that obviously are hurtful and will make you, the only thing you will learn from that is to shape up in a way of performing. So you will try to perform the best manhood you can so that you fit into the box. I'm not talking about fluid sexualities or anything here, just so people don't misunderstand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being men. I'm talking about the family structure of wanting to meet a woman that you want to have children with. But also within that, there's a number of questions that are difficult to raise and seems quite impossible to answer for many African men. And I think related to what we spoke about with Afrophobia and the power and the TRC putting this bomb explosive truth, which of course is a lie, in our face, that white power cannot be touched. I think a huge part of African manhood is also very dented by the fact that we know that our land was taken. We know that our culture was demonized. We know that our places, our communities, our villages, our cities were invaded and taken and completely changed upside down to suit the narratives of people who are not us. And in our thinking, because we are thinking of men who should be protective, men who should stand up, men who should wage war against those who attack us, on this account, we all know that we were not able to save our communities. We were not able to stand as strong men in the attack on us. And this has gone on for a very long time. I'm not trying to buy into the narrative that we didn't defend ourselves and we didn't wage war against our colonizers, but we can see the outcome. We can see where we are now. And I'm just saying that in a deep space of African manhood also sits a shame for what we have become and what was done to us. And many of us are not aware of that. So I also call it a subconscious awareness. I then want to go to, and I'll try to be a little bit short on this one because I want to assume that most of us have an idea about what patriarchy is and how misogyny also plays out in our communities. But just to say something very quickly, I see patriarchy as a primitive Western worldview, shaped by a Western worldview, which separates work from spirit, separates body from mind, and separates power from soul. And if you think deeper on those three that I mentioned, these are dualities that we, when we are in our cultural grounding, actually see as dualities that makes us move. They are dynamic, they are life forces, and they give us messages that gives us purpose. So when we have then been westernized and shaped by a worldview that is not ours, we also become very open to ideas over generations that are actually very foreign to us. Patriarchy, which basically is about the seniority and the ability to be a dominating force when you are a man and sometimes when you are an older man. And I'm not talking about respect for seniority or respect in any frame. I'm talking about domination. I'm talking about the right to inflict harm, the right to see yourself and act and be seen as a better and more important person for the very fact that you are a man. I like to, in a slightly comic way, interrogate when we say that, yeah, but obviously the man must be the head of the house. Okay, but why? No, because he's a man. Yeah, but why? No, because he's a man. Yeah, but why? Just tell me why. Well, I'm not against it. I'm just saying, just explain. No, because he's a man. But that's not an explanation. At least say no, because all men, all African men are incredibly gentle. They are kind. They are very wise. They have been schooled well. They have been taught their cultural wisdom. So they know everything. Oh, let me go and check if that is true. And I think you understand where that kind of becomes a fallacy, because many of us have not been taught. Many of us have not been schooled. Many of us have not been guided. So we are not great men by definition just because we are men. We can become great men, but that's another question. I think also patriarchy, it justifies and demonstrates the effectivity of dominance. I mentioned colonialism, which we live with right now, the aftermath of it. And we see that it worked. We see that European power was powerful. We go to Europeanized schools. We speak in English. We adore English literature. Even those of us who have reached a certain level of consciousness probably did that through a European language. It wasn't sitting under the tree with our elders speaking our indigenous tongues, most of us. So we learn on a subconscious level that domination actually works, and we bring that into the home, we bring that into our companies, we bring that into our communities, and the loudest voice, the loudest male voice will speak, the loudest male voice will have dominance. The woman is supposed to be quiet when that voice speaks. The woman is supposed to crumble under the power of the presence of that man. We have learned that in church. We have learned that even now with our twisted understanding of some of our cultural ethos, we have even twisted some of our cultural knowledges to suit that narrative. So we even learn it even in our indigenous languages. It is also taught through that. So we can't even trust what is being presented to us as culture. And on the question of misogyny, which means hatred of women, I want us to acknowledge, before we need to say, but it's not all men, but women are also problematic. Can we just own that as African men, we hate African women? And I know many would argue with me. Many would say, but you can't say that. You know me, what? I will listen to you. Explain to me how you became an African man who does not hate African women. Because you are supposed to. You were taught to. It was expected from you that you should. So if you are not, tell me about the process you went through to undo that. Tell me how you unlearned it, and tell me how you relearned a different way. I believe I have walked some steps on that journey, so I would not agree that I hate African women, but I also know that there are aspects within me that come from that teaching. It comes from that cultural dominance of how I should see myself as an African man and how I should treat an African woman. And the best thing I can do is to check myself. I want us to own that that's at least where we come from. That's what we were raised to often do. And maybe it also sits within us in some way. Then on the other side, I also want to say that as African men, I think many of us are looking at manhood, and I'm not saying this is necessarily how we discuss it, but I think deep inside, African manhood, African develops in conflict. I wanted to say something about holistic consciousness. It seems to many of us, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it seems to many of us that being a man comes in a very singular way. It's a very set way of how that must be developed, what kind of values I must live by. And we also point out men in the village, in the community, who is a real man. This man is a great man. And it often is for things that he owns, things that he has power over, the way that people respond to him with deep respect. And I'm not saying that is necessarily negativity and violent. That can be done in gentle ways. But the relearning that by the virtue of you being a man, that's how the world should see you. It seems like a very singular type of manhood. And I think we come from many forms of becoming and being men. Related to time, related to role, related to family, related to time of what time we are going through, what we are facing as a community. So there's an elasticity of manhood that we need to seek and reshape. I think for many men, and I said a little bit about this in my first slide on African men, that manhood comes across and is in a very physical way, felt like confinement, deficit, and harsh expectations. So in my confinement, I sit with race, which seems to be has just been planted on me. And as much as I can say I'm proud to be Black, I also know that my Blackness is also the points to my pain, points to my inability, points to all the things that are difficult in my and my people's lives. We sit with patriarchy and we sit with modernity, which is never African. Modernity is always Western. Modernity to us is always not us. I sit with a deficit in terms of understanding and living and retelling my story of my people. I sit with the deficit when it comes to my culture. For many of us, we can't directly reach out to culture and use its tools. And often when we present culture, and you know what I'm talking about, many young people are taught culture in a way that is uncomfortable and burdensome and doesn't seem like a solution. We sit with, especially in this part of the continent, we sit with land that has been taken away from us. And when we lose the disconnection, when we lose the connection with land, we also lose ourselves. And then I sit with these expectations that you can see on the screen that many of us are very challenged by, because when I'm not a good provider, and what does it even mean to provide in a world where so many of us are unemployed or struggle financially? How can I compensate for that when I'm by definition not a man because I don't have an income, and I probably cannot be somebody that a woman can find attractive because I don't come across as a safe choice? How do we then reframe? How do we then reframe and recreate African manhood? And I want to say that becoming a man never happens automatically. It's always a process. And I want to say that with the deficits that I've spoken about, I'm not saying we should sit and wait until everything has become whole again and then we can start the work. But I want to say that as we are now unpacking and beginning the work, it will not be fully done until it also opens up a communal space, because African manhood, just as African womanhood, cannot really be developed in isolation. It has to be developed in a response to and in a dance with African womanhood. So, but what we can do, we can create a greater sense of awareness. We can do initiation if we, and it doesn't have to be the whole nation. I think sometimes culture comes across as quite intimidating to those of us who sit with our culture being beaten into bits. There are things we can do within family space. There are things we can do within small communities and start rebuilding. Guidance, and some would maybe call it mentorship, but I would call it guidance from an older man, is extremely important as you grow up, especially as you go through your teenage years and you start to form the type of man you are. The practice of being a man, it's also a practical thing. Yes, it has a lot to do with mind and soul, but it's also a practice. And then leadership comes in, where you also now become the guide for someone else, where you also become somebody that people can walk with and see how you actually develop. I have one slide left, and here I just wanted to say a little bit about, as an example, I mentioned Shabaka, Men of Africa. Many will know that Shabaka is a great king in our history, whose legacy is that he brought together a very broken society in ancient Kemet. And he did that by looking back at the wisdom of his ancestors. And that's really what we want Shabaka to be as well. It's a platform where we do a number of activities and programs for and with African men. And within, what are we trying to do with these activities? And it's quite difficult, because I recognize that in South Africa and across a number of countries on the African continent, there's an increase in programs for men, but very few of them put the African man in the center. If we talk about leadership, we talk about starting a business, we talk about being a good husband, we talk about sexual dysfunction, but it's always from a European or Westernized lens, almost never from rooting it in an African perspective. And we don't apologize for putting the African man in the center. We don't apologize for putting ourselves exclusively at the center. We live in a society where there obviously are other races as well, but they are not welcome to these ceremonies and these meetings. This is a place for African men. Ritualized accountability means that we also draw from our African cultural tools to recognize the wound that we carry, but also the kings that we are supposed to become. So we use ritual, we use ceremony. We talk about reparative practice, because as we do this, we are also reclaiming. We are also taking back something that was stolen away from us. And that's a powerful thing to do when you've lived for generations thinking, but I don't think we can do this. We might not be able to do it to the fullest immediately, but we can and we are. And this is also about embedding epistemic justice, because you realize that there's a set of knowledge, there's a set of deep wisdom that informs how an African man should move, how we should deal with our colonial scars, how we should wake up to the calling and the purpose that actually is expected from us in a metaphysical sense. And through that, we become, and I think if you see the title here, Shabaka Men of Africa, Men on the Way. And Men on the Way is a very important slogan, in that we are walking. And that's the goal for us right now. So when people are asking, so where are you intending to go? What is the end goal of this? What is going to be the result? We will see when we get there. And that doesn't mean we have no intention about where we want to go, but we also can't always define exactly what our new African society, family, situation, like all what it should look like. It's something that we will master better and envision better when we rebuild our strength. Because where we see things from now might be quite a weak point. So our vision is not right. And as we grow into a stronger and more equipped African man, we become a better partner, we become a better father, we become a better community builder. And it's through that that we can walk into our purpose and our fullness of being. So let us invent the future. Again, not alone. Of course, this is a dance between the African man and the African woman. And part of what we also do is something we call Black Love, where we come together as sisters and brothers and mirror each other's, our own experiences in the other. And I think with those, what I've shared so far, I've spread out quite a few, I've thrown out quite a few thoughts and notions. I would hand it back to my host and say thank you so much for listening. Ashe.
Thank you, Baba Buntu. Absolutely brilliant, and thank you very much for that. I'm going to start with one thing, because this is something that's I've seen, I say as an elder, that we've lost, as elders, we've lost something that's unique to us, and then passing it down to the next generation become a challenge. You're talking about guardianship for the next generation. So how do we reclaim our African spirituality, connections, who we were before our history got distorted? How do we bring that back? Because this is something that we are missing, because even people of my age don't even know, because they're so westernized that they've broke the link. So to guide the men becomes a challenge, because basically whatever my generation are doing, we're doing it from a distorted European viewpoint, which is taking us away from ourselves. And consequently, this has affected us, how we mentor the next generation of men, because it's patriarchal. Everything we do, which basically tells us that we like you said, we jokingly, we are the head of the woman and all that kind of rubbish.
Yeah.
So how do we, because this is basically one of the biggest challenges facing back. That's basically when we say men, we are lost. We are lost because we don't know who we are.
So no, and it's a complex question, and it's not an easy answer to it as well. But let me just throw out a few suggestions to how we can co-create answers, because it's not just one way. One thing that I think is very, and I want to speak from the frame of what we can actually do, even when we find ourselves in places where we are amongst people who disagree with us and do not want to listen to what we are conversating about right now. One thing I can do is to start with my family tree, just understanding where I come from. What is my lineage? What has happened in my lineage? Have I gone and sat down with my grandparents and those who would have known them to understand their stories? Because through that, I'm starting to understand, maybe I find myself, I've been insecure, but I didn't know where that came from. Or I'm always angered and I don't know where that come from. And I'm starting to understand a bit about myself. And I think, and you would ask, but okay, that's a great thing to do, but how does that restore our spirituality? I think many of us have been so removed from our spiritual anchor that we just think of African spirituality as mysticism, as things that are done that has no touch in reality and the lives we are living now. So those of us who have started to walk journeys of spirituality also have we have an obligation to demonstrate its practicality, to bring it in ways that are not just, because I see this here in South Africa. There's been a spiritual awakening over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's beautiful. And for somebody like me who have walked this journey for a very long time, I was like, it was about time. But at the same time, sometimes some people now are more used to ritual and ceremony, but those ceremonies cannot just easily be taken into to certain family spaces, because people will say, you can't do this, this is demonic, and you will actually destroy the family that you say you are wanting to heal. So you need to also look at this consciousness and the level of pain that many of our people are sitting with, because it's not just ignorance. It's not just that they want to be westernized. It's also a result of something that was never chosen, but was pumped into them. And it sits at, literally, if you say, take down that white Jesus from the wall, you could actually say, just commit suicide. It would be the same thing. So we must also, those of us who speak loudly and are so confident about these things, we also need to learn several languages to speak depending on who we are speaking to and what we want to do. So I said two things: family tree, engaging with those that we may see as lost and see as Europeanized and all of that. We must also understand how they became like that. And let's not also be too cocky. We were also there. We didn't come out of the womb just fully decolonized. So let's also remember what that feels like, and different ways that you can bring that inspired interest to people.
Cool. Yeah, you wanna go and do. Thank you. Thanks for that, bro.
Thank you for those answers. And I always say these sessions are not just for the audience, they're for myself and Oladele as well. We are all learning, right? How can we co-create answers? That statement, that mindset. Given all the challenges we've been facing so far and trying to explain to people, just because I'm presenting the answers and suggesting solutions does not mean I'm giving the Nduko way. First of all, there's no Nduko way, because Nduko is influenced by multiple people. So her way of thinking is many other people's way of seeing it, right? But because Nduko presents a solution does not mean that Oladele cannot add to it as well, right? Does not mean that it is set in stone, unless whatever you suggest is taking us back to the old way that has been poisoning us. And then we have to say no. And if we say no, there's a reason. So I appreciate that mindset. And I urge us all to embrace it because it's needed. You started with saying the existential question is, am I meaningful? Break that down for us. How do we as African people answer that in an African way that is going to bring healing and sustain our well-being in our own way of being that is not foreign to us? Am I meaningful?
So, no, thank you for the question. And again, a suggestion towards creating that answer. Again, taking it back.
Buntu, sorry. And how do we, because we are rebuilding our curriculum, how do we put that in curriculum so that we can educate future generations on that?
Right. So, now I started to focus on that question. Just repeat the first one.
Am I meaningful? How do we ourselves answer that for ourselves? And then for those of us who are writing curriculum and building an education system, how do we implement that in that system?
Thank you. So first, to meaningfulness, when in different ways across the African continent, and more often than not, when you were born into the world in our ancient scripts, you were supposed to be read by the elders. They were supposed to interpret what you came with, the message that is within you, and the purpose that you're supposed to live by. And then the elders would tell the families and the parents, because the parents wouldn't maybe even know, but they would be told, this is important that you do like this, it's important that you give your child this, and you would then kind of know how to support your child on the road that they are supposed to walk. Many of us do not have that guidance, and we're not interpreted and read. Most of us, even sitting in spaces like this, probably are doing so because we initiated ourselves. We broke out of the mold. We became those children or those young people that our children, now our parents say, oh my God, why?
Yep.
Why? We prayed for
Yep.
you now. Why? And we became these people who crossed lines that they had told us to not cross.
Yep.
And I think there is something we need to do to bring back some of those values. And I can't speak for everyone because I know, for instance, in my family, that is not something that I can just immediately do. But I can do aspects of it. I can invite to conversations with some family members. So I think we need to find some answers between doing nothing and doing everything. There must be something we can do towards that. And we as elders, we those of us who have decided to walk like we do in this world, we can also make ourselves available intentionally. I i i, I often say like this, and I know it sounds a bit violent and off, but I sometimes break into the house of young people. And what I mean by that is I'm not waiting for them to invite me. I'm not waiting for them to be ready. I present myself. And that means I'm having conversations that I see is slightly uncomfortable. I see they're not really ready to ask. But I know and I've experienced that by doing that, and of course I don't do it in a harsh and inhumane way, but I do. It's slightly uncomfortable. It's slightly not really what they're asking for. Is Buntu coming here with all these things they're going to talk about. But a few months later, this is the young person who comes back and says, well, can I talk to you? You said something about that. I wanted to know more about that. And I don't want us to just sit and wait for everybody to get ready, because there's the reason people are not ready. And they live in a world that continues to affirm them in their non-readiness. We need to build that. We need to help them build courage so that it's okay to ask these questions. It's okay to read these books. It's okay to start understanding what ceremony means, what ritual means. And to the curriculum question, I think, again, it's stages. And one stage that I feel that we need to work very hard on, and I'm talking about teams that I'm working with here in South Africa as well, to do school systems, to do learning processes, to do relearning programs. We also need to understand, what does ritual and ceremony mean in spaces like that? Because we often recruit volunteers and people who also come with huge scars of pain. And we just say, no, you must teach Garvey, you must teach Queen Nzinga, you must teach this, you must teach that. Yeah, but I'm still broken. Like, it's a beautiful story. Queen Nzinga, wonderful. But I'm still broken. I'm after this learning program, I'm still going back to my broken family. What am I going with? And they will not listen to Queen Nzinga. So what am I learning as I'm becoming a teacher, as I'm becoming an African-centered practitioner? What am I learning about the pain that even in our spaces, let's be honest, it's not easy to talk about these pains, even in our spaces. In Pan-African spaces, we don't listen. We come from so many problems in our homes. We cannot talk about that. Where can you say that you were sexually molested as a child in a Pan-African space? Nowhere. You cannot say it. Sorry. You cannot say it. So our spaces are not safe. Our spaces has a lot of regulations of what you can say and what you cannot say. And we also then become performative. I'm very offended when people say, it looks like a hotep. I'm very offended by that, because to me, hotep is such a sacred word. But I understand how we got here. And I need to take some responsibility and accountability to check myself when I'm walking with this. So the curriculum must also be practice, not just words. I'm not against writing curriculums. I'm not against, of course, we need books. Of course, we need manuals. Of course, we need lesson plans. But we also need practices. How do we open the day of the classroom? How do we as teacher affirm each other? How do we also bring in healing aspects just for us, as the men and women we are, as we are going out to teach the children? So I think maybe to coin it, a holistic form of relearning is very much needed, even in the space of curriculum.
Thank you so much for that, because you're right. Oh my goodness. And this is why I present my pain in these sessions. This is why I cry and don't apologize for it in these sessions when I'm moved to cry. But what I have been experiencing in our communities today is my pain will show up in how I'm speaking. And the people I'm dealing with realize I'm speaking that way because of my pain, but they will not sit with me to address that pain. They will criticize how I'm speaking. right? And make it as if it is my way of being, when they know and understand that it is my pain that causes that way of being, right? And then there's I remember a couple of weeks ago, I said right here on Kumbukeni, I lost my grandmother. I said it as a passing, but none of our followers, none of our subscribers sent me a message. How are you doing, Duku? May your grandmother have a safe transition. None of our followers. And we are a few hundred from 3,000 subscribers. I don't think they've all watched that session, but there were some who attended and watched. None of those who did sent that. So we have been placed in this space where we don't even recognize each other's pain, even when we're being told about it.
True.
We don't even recognize it, right? And we are quick to criticize each other's symptoms from that pain. And I'm moving differently now, especially in my personal, intimate relationship. I'm moving differently, where other people would be asking me, are you crazy for still being in this situation? And asking probably my partner, are you crazy for still being in this situation? But both of us understand that we are pained people. We are bruised people. And we have to start nursing each other's bruises while we love on each other and grow and build. We cannot criticize the behavior as long as that individual is willing to work and recognize that the behavior is caused by that pain and willing to actually say, okay, I'm willing to start working with you to nurse my wounds so that we can heal. But this is, I'm glad you said this, because this is a message that should go to everyone. We need to move differently if we're actually going to say we're doing this work, especially those who are leading in this work. We have to move differently. And I'm thankful that you presented this to me, because as I now put the curriculum, it's something I knew, but something that I'll be more intentional about. Mental well-being and the re-healing from where we are now has to be addressed in the new curriculum. It has to be. We have to figure out an African-centered way of dealing with pain, because the Western way, as is evident, is leading our men to be more feminine, is leading our women to be more masculine. In the name of healing, the women are becoming more masculine. In the name of healing, the men are becoming more feminine. Therefore, continuing the breaking up of like the Yo, Baba. Speak to that if you can.
Yeah. No, it's deep. No, thank you for what you have said, sister. I think again, this conversation is just so symptomatic of the many layers to this. And that for everything we say, there's something we don't. So there's always something to add to the conversation. I think I want us to be, let's also remember that we've been taught very stoic versions of what is feminine and what is masculine. even those of us who learned at one point that femininity and masculinity is kind of a dance, whether you're a man or a woman, you need to have elements of both and you need to harmonize. But we still often gravitate towards thinking of femininity as soft and giving in and not being troublesome, as we have kind of woven into the ideal African woman who should be quiet and not ask too many questions, present delicious food. Or the man who is always providing, is always strong, always have the right solution. And even in our criticism of that, I think we are very used to it because we live with that, with sometimes with our parents, with our family members, with the communities that we are around. So I feel we also need to have a sense of decolonizing and restructuring how we look at that as well. Meaning that I think the ideal for me is not to just find a feminine way of being, meaning that I must be in touch with my emotions. I must also be able to have a softer edge to myself. But I also must know time and space, because there's certain times the situation will call for that quality within me, and I must respond to it. And then it's not about, am I a feminine man or a masculine man or what, but this is a situation where feminine qualities in me are needed, and I must be able to produce it. That doesn't take away from my strength. It doesn't take away from my other qualities, but I must be able to read the room, read the situation, read the person who's coming to me. If I'm just, no, I don't talk like that, I'm like this all the time, then there's something really wrong. And I think this is the beauty, and I know to some, especially those of us who have become so estranged to our culture, I find it beautiful that African culture allows so much, let me call it dancing, because dancing meaning that you are moving with the rhythm of life. So the way I am with my wife last year might be slightly different from how I am with her this year, because we sit with a different experience. We went through something last year that did something to us, and we are now approaching each other based on that experience. And why should we then sit down and say, but you are different than you were before? No, but hey, you've added a layer to your existence. You added another quality to who you are. Let me appreciate. You always said you were difficult for you to talk. Now you are talking so much. Let me appreciate and big you up for that. Not tear you down and say, but you used to be quiet. That's what I want? No. So I'm trying to say that when we say through some of the healing modalities we now go through, women become masculine. I agree with what you are saying, and I think what you are referring to is that women become more independent. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why many African women now feel that being independent, not relying on a man, not maybe even wanting to have a child, is a sense of strength. And of course, that comes from the experience that many mothers and women before them went through of not having choices to do that, always having to do that. Even when your womb was not working, you need to have a child or you can go and kill yourself. That was the option. So it's also against that. And we also need to find healing for that. I believe very strongly in healing of the lineage, healing of those who came before me, through me, because they might not have the consciousness, but maybe I do, and there's something I can do to harmonize my ancestorhood in that moment. And I think also as men, when we start to talk more, when we start to feel more, I think to some extent it's okay that we allow ourselves to be softer in response to always having to be hard, always having a frontier, always having to say, I'm fine. Whatever happens, I'm fine. And it feels wrong when I'm saying, no, actually, I don't know how I'm feeling. Like, I don't even know what to call it. That feels so wrong. It feels all kinds of nonsense. It's difficult to even say it. But allow me to be in that space. Let me experience that. That doesn't mean I'm going to fall apart. Actually, I might be able to shift to the side the many confusions that I'm carrying. And under that, I find a new strength and a new courage to rebuild myself. So let's continue to dance. I think that's what I want to say, even for my own experience of dancing with my wife. You mentioned something earlier, Sisindugu, that it's important that when we meet each other, we are aware of the pain we also bring to the table. Because I might harm you. I might not be safe for you. And that's not because I think I'm a bad person, but I don't know who I am if I'm going to be really honest. I don't know who I am if I'm going to give you all of me, because that's not what I normally do. So if I'm going to give you access, I'm just saying that there's some things we need to do to. So one of the things we did, we decided from get-go that it's not allowed to shout. Whatever you go through, whatever you're feeling, however irritated you are with your partner, is not allowed to shout. But of course, that we can only do that because we have experienced that we are with a partner who doesn't have bad intentions. So if my wife disappoints me, I know it's not because she sat and she cooked up a story. Let me see how I can irritate this man. Let me see how I can do exactly opposite of what he likes. That's not why it came out in a wrong way. She may not have been aware. It was a mistake. She was tired. There's a reason. And we can talk about that. I don't have to say, why do you always have to talk like this? You see, you don't understand anything. Already, I'm trying to make her a very small person. And the only thing she can do in that moment is to succumb and become that little person so that I don't escalate my violence, or she must stand up against me. And then she will face another fire. You see, you are speaking back. You see, you think you're better. You see, now you are coming. You think you're a man. That's your problem. No, we need to lower some of these tempers and say there must be. We're going to create time and space so we can listen to each other, so I can hear your pain, and even when I don't understand it, tell me again until I do.
Wow. You know, you said something also that actually got me, and most men, because I'll keep saying that, I'm nearly 60, and as I get older, I've become more emotional. Right. When I was younger, I never cry. But as I've gotten older, I just find it so easy to actually well up and just let my emotions go.
Right.
And that is work that needs to be done. And like you said, most of us don't always just get here. It's basically you going through a lot of things that you've gone through and then shared a lot of things. And that's where the decoloniality comes in, the going through the trauma. Because all of us have gone through one trauma or the other. Because different families have different baggages. And then, like you said, you come together, and two damaged people coming together. And it's a lot of work. And then being in touch and being real with each other. And that's basically where myself and my wife have gotten to at this later stage of our lives, that we understand each other so well that my wife can say something and I know what she's going to say, or I'm thinking, you know what I'm thinking. But it takes work to accept each other's faults, and build on each other's weaknesses and strengths as well, and be there to uplift each other in that moment of weakness. And in the times of strength, support each other either way. So what you're saying there, just it hits home. It basically, and this is the work that, for those of you who are listening, this is what we need to do. Because sadly, the patriarchal thing, based on if you're a Christian or a Muslim, those things are toxic. That is basically damage a lot of people. If you're still looking at your husband being like Buntu said, the man is the head of the house. The head of what? This religion basically messes up so badly that if the man cannot live up to that,
he's by definition not one.
By that, and then you beat him up. Whereas if we can, and this is what we use the word ma'at, balance, equilibrium. Being having the feminine energy and the masculine energy equated and balanced together.
That's right.
And this is how the work is being done. And like Baba Buntu said, basically then helping each other to heal, giving each other that space to understand each other and build a trust, which is a key aspect of it. Build a trust among yourselves and be there to lift and uphold each other in the times of weakness. And that way, we build something beautiful, which then transcends to your kids and the people around you. And this is how we build community. And this is basically what we're not doing. So we're coming at this from a really, really, really messed up place, and we're trying to build. So this is what we need to do. So and like you said, patriarchy is basically one of the worst things ever. And how do we? Because this is ingrained in people's heads. Let's talk in solutions here. Where do we go? How do we start encouraging the men to get out of? Go on. How do we get out of this?
But before we talk about the solutions, there's actually a few of the problems that I'd like him to address. So if you want to go through the problems, and then we can talk about solutions.
Fair enough.
Baba Buntu, if you can please speak some more about that fear and hate of the African woman, because you touched on it, but now go deep. How does this show up in the Black man?
Good one.
No, thank you very much. And now I'm speaking. I'm not addressing those who are clearly violent and clearly talk down about women. I'm talking about those men who may not come across as particularly hateful to women. I think so. Let's remember that most of us, we have been very extremely westernized, and at the root of Western power and culture also sit a deep-seated hatred and fear, maybe even more fear, from the white man to the white woman. You will remember back in their history how they castigated and violated women who spoke out too strongly, those who were too wise, those who knew too much. That was very dangerous. So the European patriarchal understanding was very much that the woman must be a servant to the white man. And not because she wasn't able to do anything else, but because the man didn't know how he could be a man next to a woman who was equally or maybe even stronger than him. So she would have to be, by definition, weaker. And should she rise to a level that threatened the man, he would have to reprimand her, punish her, or like they did, they killed women who were strong in society. They burnt them even. and us going to churches, going to political spaces, going to leadership courses, business courses, and learning this mixed with some sentiments of our own African cultures, we have then also started to mix this up. And let's say I'm just saying examples to illustrate a point. Let's say there's a particular proverb that talks about the importance of a woman being gentle. Now we bring that up as an example. Yeah, it's even true. Even our own culture, we say this. Yeah, but that doesn't mean she shouldn't be strong. But there are times she should be gentle. There's times she should be soft. It doesn't make sense as she's nurturing her newborn baby that she's angry and speaking. It doesn't make sense. But after 2 years, after a year, she's gonna be back and talk like so. So I'm just trying to say that we have also allowed ourselves to pick and choose certain things within our culture that aligns with, and maybe this is exactly what our European so-called masters also did when they wanted to interpret the Bible for us, when they wanted to take us to missionary school. You know, they studied our languages. They started to, you can see that sometimes they are even the teachers of some of these languages because they wanted to understand the depth of it, and they wanted to understand it so they could further confuse us and use our culture against ourselves. So I think within that, we also sit as African men with a deep hatred for women. Women irritate us. Many of us sit with a mother wound because we were not able to connect with our mothers in the way that we had hoped or that maybe we deeply needed. And we then take that out on a partner that we meet. Some of us have been checked by women, and it wasn't a nice experience. We thought we were clever and wise, and a woman said, you know what, you don't even know what you're saying. And she set us straight. And in that moment, my ego just exploded into 1,000 pieces. How could you do that in front of my friends, in front of everyone? After years, I'm still going back to that episode. You understand? Like, and I think this is something that we haven't really understood to its core, the sensitivity of the male ego. We are kind of set up to, especially for women, to dance around a man's ego. So women would say, no, I shouldn't talk like that. He doesn't like that. So I shouldn't talk about that. Or I shouldn't do this. He gets very irritated. So I don't talk to him about that. So the idea is that whatever the man is, you as a woman, you must, that's your role. Even in our marriage traditions, you are advised, make sure my husband never goes to bed angry. That's your job. Make sure that you wear something nice and enticing, so if he loses interest, you're always there to make sure that you are appeasing and he will still have interest in you. Otherwise, he's going to go to someone else, and that's on you. So the woman now it's her role, it's her job to keep the man interested, to keep him energized, to keep him like this is very, very problematic. And then when you have gotten used to over generations and maybe even adored your grandfather, because that's the role modelship he was offering you. You saw his grandmother do that. And maybe you thought, okay, so this is what a man is. I'm going to go out and date now. And women are not talking to me the way my grandmother is talking to my grandfather. What is wrong? I'm going to have to teach them a lesson. I'm going to have to choose maybe the most insecure woman because she seems to listen. She seems to say when I raise my voice, she seems to listen. And this works for my ego. She says, oh, Buntu, it's so nice to sit next to you. You are so strong. I feel so, wow, this is a woman. Yeah, this is the one. I'm going to marry this one. But I'm not checking what I'm doing. And I'm trying to, my goal is to kind of continue in life with the least amount of corrections that I have to do to myself. So I'm looking for the woman who's not going to challenge me. I'm looking for the woman who's leaning into me, wants my number, always misses me, always talks about me. In a way, I'm looking for somebody who has been framed to be a weaker person.
I'm so glad you said that. Because, and let me say this, and then it might actually help with what you're about to say. This is a trend I'm seeing in Black American men, and I'm going to come for you right now, Black American men. You apparently have decided that your Black American women are undateable, and therefore now you're going to date African women. That's a problem. Because you are doing exactly what Baba Buntu just said. Those African women, there's a reason why they are the way they are. And it might not all be good. It might be from heart. It might be from pain. right?
Absolutely.
And instead of sitting with your women or the women that you have access to, the Black American woman, as one woman, right? She's the African woman. Instead of sitting with her and finding healing, because you, Black American man, are wounded too and are causing pain to people. So don't be attacking Black American women as if you are good. No. Right? So instead of sitting with your Black American woman and figuring out what is the issue, right? And healing each other and nurturing each other, you are walking away from her, leaving her wounded to continue destroying, because you don't understand Ubuntu, that whether you leave her or not, she will continue destroying because she's not finding healing. And now going to the African woman, and you yourself have not even healed yourself, because guess what? The Black American woman is the way she is because of you.
Well, sister, I would like to add to that I think there's definitely a long track record of us as African men having caused a lot of pain, hurt, deception, and so forth to women for many generations. We have done that. And of course, there's reasons for that. There's colonial aspects to that. There's westernization to that and all of that. And it's important to talk about that too. But let's own that we have pushed African women into a very weird form of existence. And when they now, some of them are now standing up and say, I'm not going to be that woman anymore. I'm going to be completely opposite. We don't know how to react to that, because that sounds like, and the anger that comes, which when you look at it, of course is justified. It comes from somewhere. But when it comes to me, because I try to look at myself as a nicer man, I don't shout to women, I don't put them down. So how are you talking so harsh to me? Why can't you see me? Why can't you see that you know what? I always say this. If as an African man, when Ndugo needs to shout to useless African men, and I know I'm not one of them, why should I have to respond? Go for those men that you're talking about. Let them understand what it feels like to be on the receiving end of that. I don't have to be provoked. I don't have to stand up and say, Ndugu, how can you talk like that? You're saying this like that. No, let me understand. But I think we also need to have an equation to that, because I'm sitting with, and I do a lot of counseling with men. I know a lot of men who have been the soft men, who have been the non-judgmental men, who have said, you know what, my woman maybe has different ways. Let me not be the one who always stops her and checks her and polices her. But for some of them, it has turned around the other way, where they have been abused, where they have been taken advantage of, where they have been cheated on. And I think what this is not, because, sometimes as men, we say about women like that. We say, yeah, you see, women now, they're coming for us. It's upside down now. Women are the problem now. No, this is us not understanding how to deal with pain in a collective way. And that's where you might remember that a few moments ago I mentioned Black Love as a workshop that we actually come into the room as African men, African women. There's a time when only women can speak. There's a time when only men can speak, and there's a guideline for how we respond to what we heard the other gender say, and a way we need to explain how I am listening to that. And I can say I don't understand, but then I must ask. So when you say that most men do, what do you mean? Not instead of saying, but you can't talk like that. No, not all men. No, we shut women down, and we do it as it is our vocation sometimes. And I know women do that to men sometimes as well. So we also need to step out of our toxicity and create some spaces where I'm going to lower the volume, where I'm going to lower the drama, where I'm going to lower my anger and listen. But of course, for me to do that, I need to see that you are also doing the same. So this is something we need to relearn, because it no longer comes natural. We are in our feelings. We are resentful. We are angry. We are short-tempered. We have hatred for ourselves and each other. And we can only start to heal that when we have some guided reflections, dialogues, and listening and mirroring ourselves in each other. And I think very interesting with the Black Love, what often comes out is that both men and women come out of that workshop saying that I didn't know that there's so much about my own pain that I also find in the other gender. I didn't know that. I always felt I need to tell them what I felt because they don't understand. But now I see that they also went through something that is related and similar. Thank you.
You know, my brother, this is basically for anybody who's listening. I think you need to watch this again because basically you gain some free lessons here of how to deal with each other. You know, and Baba Buntu, I really appreciate what you're saying because a lot of us need to hear this. You know, I'm listening to you and I'm, you know, there's certain things in my head. I'm thinking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, guys, if you're listening to this, this is why we basically do this kind of podcast, basically to heal, to make us understand, and to find ways forward to how we can get from where we are to where we need to be as Africans, because we need to manifest Ubuntu. And for us to do that, we need love. We need to love each other. And if we don't love each other, there's no way we're going to make Africa right when we're hating on each other. And this is basically where all these Afrophobia is coming from, because all these things are steeped into these things. So we need to start looking. We need to love each other, guys. We don't always have to agree, but we have to respect each other. And we have to find a way, like my brother said, basically to find a common ground. And you know what? We all know, and we continue to say this, we know who our common enemy is. So why are we not uniting together to do what we need to do to empower ourselves? And the white monopoly capital needs to be brought down. It's not untouchable. So, but the only way we can do that is if the feminine energy and the masculine energy aligns and we start focusing on what we need to focus on and do the work that we need to do. That's the only way we're going to get there. Yeah. And that's my comments on that. Undercoat, you want to say anything else?
Yes, I have the problem, like I went slide by slide, so I have the African manhood closed cage or invitation of liberation is where I am now, speaking on the deficit and expectation. I'll ask the deficit question first. You mentioned our story, culture, and land, right? I was at an event earlier this year, or maybe it was towards the end of the year last year. Nevertheless, a respected member of the community here in the United States, the Black community, was presenting, and he said land was not important.
Wow.
Right? And I got up, you know, as an African, I got up. And I said, listen, and this is part of African spirituality. This is part of economy. This is part of education. Land is the grounding. Without it, forget about anything else. It literally is the thing you must have and then build on it. Sovereign access to it and then build on it. Without land, you risk everything. So it is an essential. And so, Baba Buntu, speak to that deficit and how it affects manhood. This is our story, culture, and land.
No, thank you. I think you have already covered it really well in what you said. And maybe to add to that, I think our indigenous culture tells us that land speaks to us. Land is so close to who we are. My identity is shaped by the land because it's as I'm working with the land, as I start to understand the seasons, as I understand what is good soil, what is not so good soil, what is good soil for this, what can I expect here. I'm understanding, I'm starting to heal myself. Those who work with land know what I'm talking about. There's a sense of healing you feel from just touching, being in that ecosystem of how soil work, nature, temperatures, wind, rain, all of these things work together. And they inform you. If there's been a lot of rain, you need to do this. If there's been very little rain, you need to do this. In that is perfect with land. You also, on a subconscious level and sometimes on a conscious level, also learn how to approach dynamics and rhythms of life. Because we have seasons, we have temperatures, we have weathers, we have soil, we have these are also components within our lives, within our relationships, within our businesses, in what we're trying to create. And when you don't have the template from working with the land, you become it's very abstract. I think working with the land is very practical. Your hands are in the land, your feet walk, you need to have special wear, you need to have special tools for certain things. And you start to find yourself moving with that, which is a rhythm. And that rhythm tells you something about who you are. It tells you something about the season, meaning change, meaning that you can't just do one thing throughout the whole year and then expect things to grow. No, in this season, you need to do like that. In this season, you need to do like that. Normally, in this season, you do this, but because of X, Y, and Z, this time we need to do it different. Now, this is intelligence. This is you reading signs. This is you relating. And if you think about it, there's a message there. Your partner is different now than she was before. You need to interpret what this is about. You need to see the season. You need to use a different tool to soften the relation. So I'm just saying that working with the soil, working with the land, and let's also remember, and which is a huge sense of power in the African understanding. But let me also say that we also interpret ownership very differently than what we have now been accustomed to. Because now we talk about title deeds, we talk about documents that we can now go to court and show that we are the owners of this particular land, and if you're not, then we have a case. Owning is not private ownership. It's not my land. I am chosen as the person to watch over this land. I'm chosen as the person to allow this land to come into its fullness. I'm learning as I'm doing this, and I'm preparing the soil even for the next owner of this land, the next generation, whoever is going to inherit this land. So I inherited from my foremothers and forefathers, but I'm also giving to the next generation. And I need to see it in that huge timeline. And that makes me more humble. I can't just say that I want this soil to produce 50 of this to me. If it doesn't, it's a useless soil. I can't do that. I need to ask the soil, what do you want to produce? What am I supposed to do with you so that you can give us something to eat? It's a dance. It's a rhythm. It's a relationship. And there's so much to draw from that we can interpret into our daily existence of solving problems, of having difficulties, of working with challenges, but also finding the solutions. So when we don't connect with and don't own, in the African sense, land, we become nobody. We lose our identity. It's not just about name. It's not just about how I feel and what kind of skills or temperatures I come with. It's also about what I relate to and what I am a product of. Because we talk about Mama Africa, and the soil is the representation of Mama Africa, and my job is to honor her.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll take, before I ask this question, and then Oladele, that last slide was basically solution. So I'll leave you to handle that. The one that said Shabaka, Men of Africa, Men on the Way, ritualized accountability, reparative practice, embedding epistemic justice. So once I ask this one, Oladele, it's all yours. But calling it a dance, I have been saying that for so long, so that people understand that this is not just Nduku's way. It is the way that we are clearly seeing as we relearn and reclaim who we are. We are clearly, nature is showing us that it's a dance. Why we say it's a dance? Because when I move forward, you move back. Otherwise, I'll step on your foot. You have to move back for the dance to continue. When I move sideways, you have to move with me sideways. You have to for the dance to continue. Otherwise, the dance stops. And where we are now is the dance cannot even move forward. We're stepping on each other. We're hurting each other. We're falling on the dance floor. And there's no rhythm. We see rhythm in music only, but rhythm is also supposed to be present in life. How we move with ourselves, how we move with our partners, how we move with our children, how we move with the earth. So I appreciate you for saying it that way. Expectation. And this one, I actually really, really want you to dig deep on for us, because I will give the nuance that is necessary for us to address this to the best way we can in this moment, and given the limited resources. Because we are in a state where, back in the day before we were disrupted, we could say, yes, man, you're the provider, because man was sovereign, because man owned land, because man was not stopped or prevented from actually using his physical self to provide. But today, man is owned as a laborer. Man does not decide whether he has a job or not. In fact, he is fired and prevented from getting jobs is what it is. Black men, right? They are prevented from attaining education that allows them to get those jobs. So in a community, in the society we currently are in, where the system itself is preventing the Black man from being in a position of providing, you cannot, as a Black woman, bring the pressure of that requirement and that expectation of him becoming a provider. You have to step in understanding the society you deal with that allows you as a Black woman to go for those degrees that allow you to have those well-paying jobs. You will need to step in. You're bringing the income into the pool for the family, and then your man can use it to provide whichever way he chooses to, right? So as I give that background, Baba Buntu, explain the danger in us women operating without understanding those nuances, demanding and expecting of our men to be providers when the system is not even allowing them to be in that position.
No, thank you so much, Zindugu. I think you have framed it so beautifully and so clearly that we come from a past or a way where men had particular roles that they were supposed to follow and be and excel in, and the way we lived and the surroundings and the resources allowed for that to happen. So when it was then driven very hard that you must be a responsible man, it was also to make sure that men should not be lazy. Men should not just roam around and do nothing. There should be an expectation. And I think African culture has always come with that we expect things from our men. And when we don't see this in our men, we will bring it to them and there will be disciplinary orders. There will be things happening to you when you are just stepping out and becoming a lazy or dysfunctional man. But now, as you said, our being, our labor is owned by external forces that are not just paying for us to have rent, but they're also really destroying us at the same time. As much as we need them, they also continue to destroy us. And I think there's some sensitivity and intelligence that we need to handle very well as African men and African women. And because you wanted me to talk about how women must understand when they just put pressures there, but he doesn't even provide, he doesn't even have money, he doesn't even have a car, what you are doing to break a man, because that is absolutely true. But let me also explain how deeply this sits within men. I have worked with men who have decided to break relationships because of not being able to provide financially, being with a woman who did not put them down, who did not say you are useless, who did not say, what am I supposed to do with a man like that? They were saying, I do understand. I'm here for you. I see you work the best you can. Don't take this as a personal failure. Let's see what we can do together. But the man could not stomach. And this comes back to an ego, because this is another aspect of our ego as well, that many of us as men, when we cannot, and the thing is, some of us have very high expectations to ourselves. And we live in a world that also tells us that, no, you shouldn't just give your house, your wife a house. You should give her 2 houses. You should even give 3 cars. And we see women now talk about, he gave me money to go. And okay, so I need to do even more. Like, it needs to stand out in an extreme way. And then we have some women's voices who also say that, I don't have to worry about anything. My man takes care of me. He's a real African man. He knows his role. He knows. And we listen to that. And for each line that woman says, we sink and we sink and we sink. And the women who listen maybe are also thinking, I wish I was her. I wish I could say the same. If I was going to speak next, I was going to speak about my man. He doesn't have a job. I didn't get a gift in 5 years. That's not a story I can sit and tell to anyone. Like, what am I supposed to do here? And I think there's something we need to do with our inner intelligence. What do we want out of a relationship? Because fine, even if you do get all those houses and cars, are you content? Are you really in your fullness of your purpose? Are you really walking this earth doing what our ancestors need you to do? Maybe not. Probably not. And I think one of the things I did when I was dating my wife, I thought, my ego wants to impress her. I want her to think there is no other man beyond me. Like, this is where it stops. If you leave me, there's going to just be pain and nonsense after that. So you need to stop here. I want to impress her, but I don't have a lot of things to impress her with. And at the time, I wasn't in a good financial standing. And I decided, let me be honest with her. Because the worst thing I can do for my own future is to also present myself as somebody who can give X, Y, and Z, and then her getting used to that. And maybe she is a woman I wouldn't have known at that point. But if she was a woman who was attracted to that and said, you know what, I'm going to stay with this man. This man gives me gift like nobody. But what am I going to do next year? What am I going to do 2 years from now when I can't sustain this thing that I've kind of promised her that if you choose me, this is what you're going to do? So I decided to present what I could do. I was very open about who I am, and she had full insight to who she was choosing if she decided to be with me. And that might not feel so nice to my ego, but I understand by seeing what's happening around me and also from my own mistakes in earlier life, that this is the only way that I can find a partner who I can create a life with. And I need to think about this for the long run. I can't just think about when everything is romantic and beautiful and you are just looking at each other and you're falling apart from softness inside because everything is just so incredibly beautiful. There's going to be a harsher day. There's going to be rain coming. There's going to be thunderstorms. There's going to be days you can't even look each other in the eye and answer, why am I with you? Who are we then? Why should she? What reason am I giving her to choose me in that moment? And am I attracting a person who equally can see that this is what we need to work towards to find each other as a couple for life? So it takes a lot of maturity. And I think, Oladele, you said it so beautifully. You said it takes a lot of work. And I think people who have not been in a marriage, they don't know what you mean when you say that. Yeah, we need to work. But I guess after a year or two, you can kind of relax. No, you cannot. That's when the work starts. Because the first year is easy. Well, not for everyone, but more or less, it's easier. Year 5, year 7, year 11, storms are coming.
36 years counting, my brother. 36 years. 36 years counting.
You have built a foundation of realness. You need to build something to fall back on when other things are not working. And I understand that that's difficult. And let me phrase it as a plea also to sisters that look at what's happening with men in this world. Black men are not wanted. Black men are a threat to the system, and black men who become stronger or take up more space are only met with vicious pushback. So when you see him and when you find him at the end of that process and call him weak, calling him somebody who can't stand up for himself, calling him somebody who has lost his voice, check yourself before you say that. Maybe you are wrong. Maybe this is somebody who has really tried every rule in the book to be that man. But the societies we live in cannot tolerate a man who has a voice, who can stand up straight. And I'm not saying you need to now decide that you're going to fix him, because that's not a good plan. But you can be understanding, you can be supportive, you can give space. And I think for a woman to find out how a man really is, and I think it goes both ways. Look at what he does to not impress you. Look at what he does when he's not just trying to get your approval, not just trying to get you in a romantic mood, but what he does on a regular. And when you see that he's doing things that are of good value, you're a man. You can't measure the man in terms of his income, in terms of his paycheck, in terms of what company he's working for. And if you are doing that, I think you're also making a choice. So don't come running now when you feel like you want to divorce this cold man who's always at work, always traveling, always out there getting. You said that that's the man you are looking for, and now you got it. So live with the consequences or make a better choice.
Undercook, have you got any other points you want to highlight before I go to the questions?
Just to add to that, I was putting it in the chat, but just to respond to, as I add to what Baba Buntu said, and to respond to Nyasha Maleko, who said it wasn't true that men were expected to be providers in African culture, and in fact women provided. Exactly. We agree with you. It wasn't.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the nuance of it all. As we have these conversations today, with the dirtying of our culture and the detachment from our culture, you're absolutely right. In fact, you're so right, because African culture did not have defined roles. Again, it was a dance. When the need arose for the woman to step in, she stepped in based on the skills and the strength and the availability. When the need, there was no defined, nothing set in stone. That's how right you are. So, Baba Buntu, I don't know if you want to touch on that one. I'm done
No,
already.
I just want to. It's a very good example of how we often talk past each other, because when I say men were providing, some would hear that as saying, also women were not. Women were just sitting there. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. We were talking about, are men? Is it fair to expect from men that they can provide? And we're talking about that there was a different role under a different living condition. So I did not say that women were not providers and women were just sitting under trees looking beautiful. That's not what this is. But I was just trying to explain that there was a different circumstance under which you could also expect a man to be a provider.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, in rounding up, I've got a list there. So the challenges we face is capitalism, patriarchy, religion, education, colonialism. It goes on. This is basically what's going us to where we are today in terms of imposing a particular role over the other. We can agree on that, can't we?
Yep.
Okay, my brother. And there's a lot of, and for a lot of you listening, because a lot of clever blacks here, and this is why we talk about decoloniality, decolonizing our minds, because our thought process, our beliefs, which I don't believe in believe anyway, is knowing. But our beliefs are steeped in basically a Western education, what was imposed on us. So whatever you think you know, it's not cultural to Africa. It's basically an imposed philosophy, which has come from people who are just new people, because we are, like I always say, we are the original, and we had a manuscript, we had a way of doing things, but they just kept imposed their ways on us. So based on all those things I've basically put down, my brother, talking about solutions. How do we navigate? How do we make our people navigate based on all those things that are holding us back? All the Western ways, the white man ways, basically holding black people back. How do we navigate as Africans to then manifest and be ourselves? Because this is one of the biggest challenges for us.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for the question. And I just want to frame how I'm going to answer it, because of course it's a huge question and it needs a huge answer. But and one thing I do that some people don't like is that I often seem to bypass the more structural changes we also need, interrogating the nation state, the broader economy, our trade, our international. And I'm not saying that's not important, but I'm saying that we could have conferences and conferences and conferences about how that should look in some distant future, but we still haven't moved. So this is because I want to be a practitioner. I don't want to just be a talker. So I'm talking about things that I do already and things that I know is available to me, because I don't have access to a lot of things that I actually want to change. But the few things I do, I want to do that well. So when you say, what do we do to change? So I could wish that capitalism is going to be over tomorrow, but it's not going to be. So and I'm not saying we should give up on it and just accept. But I know that within what I have access to, I have access as a father, as an elder, as a family man, as a community man, as somebody who has some sense of leadership in some spaces. I can watch very carefully what I do with the connections, with the conversations, and with the programs I engage with people in, and make every second count. So for me, what it means as an African man is to have conversations like this, in not just online and in places where people can kind of come in and it becomes a kind of a semi-public conversation, but with the guy who's sitting drinking on the corner, who nobody sees, nobody wants to talk to the sister that I see with the blue eye coming out of her house. I know what happened. I can't just pass her and pretend, yeah, it's not really my business to ask any. No, it is. Maybe I shouldn't step in. Maybe I should ask my wife to go because it's easier for her to talk to another woman. but there's something I can do with what I see and what I know. And I think that awareness and that consciousness, that might be different from person to person, but what it means in my life is that I intentionally create spaces where we can have conversations, where we can find solutions, and where we also put those solutions in place. And because of time, I know I can't talk about all the programs I do, but I want to talk about one. One thing we did 5 years ago was that, and we were inspired by the horrors of COVID and lockdown. We realized that this really was an extremely awkward and horrible experience. We are really enslaved, even those of us who profess to have some form of freedom. We don't even own anything. We don't even have our own space. We have no refuge. We if the electricity is out, we're done. So we said, no, we need to work towards having our own land space. So we came together as 4 families and created a commune. There are slight differences between us, but we agree on very principal things. We want an African education for our children. We want to live harmoniously as couples, as families, as a commune. And to illustrate what that means, so we are 4 families with 4 married couples with children. To the point that we will not allow you to divorce. Meaning, of course, if something horrible happened, we're not going to say that you're going to be together for the sake of being together. But we already have checked. We see you as amicable people. We see you as grounded people. We see you as somebody who's really trying to make value in this life. But even if you get tired or have conflict with your partner, we will be part of that solution. So if we see that it looks like we never see your wife smiling next to you, what is going on? We're going to come to you. What's going on? And people say, but this is private. Yes, but it also impacts on us because this is our sister. My wife loves your wife and we need her. So even if you don't like her, you better find a way. And if you can't find it, we're going to find it even for you. So it's really very intentional. This is not just seeing what works. Maybe this is not working. For every challenge we face, we solve it together. We come together, we sit with each other, we talk to each other. Things that none of us come from. None of us come from this. We come from the stories. You know, all of us grew up on stories. Yeah, but you see, in Africa, we used to do this. We lived together. We were one. But Grandpa, you didn't even live like that. Why are you saying it like, because you're making me feel like I'm bad because I don't have that experience. It is a while ago since that experience was normal. And that is not to say that it doesn't exist at all, but you know what I'm trying to say. So when we sit in this space and we walk this journey, every step is new. Every solution we need to create is for the first time, or especially in this way. So I'm just talking more about that because for me, it's a very practical solution that I know more people around this continent can do. Because unfortunately, we are wired, especially when we get a little bit of income, a cute little degree, we earn a little salary. Now we want to move to town. Now we want to move to suburbs. Now we want to live like Europeans. What is wrong?
We want to go to concentration camps, my brother. Concentration camps.
You look at the land, you say, but it's dirty. I don't know if I can do anything like that. There's nothing on it. No. That's an example of how destroyed this system has made you. So I think I want to put the challenge back to whoever is listening and following our conversation. I always say, if you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. So if you don't want to be part of the problem, what is the solution you are part of? Which organization? What program are you working on? Not thinking about. Yes, it takes thinking to get there. But at one point, the thinking needs to stop and you just start doing it. Even if you don't always know exactly how things are done, you learn certain things when you are walking. We haven't been free in a while, so none of us know how that feels. None of us know. None of us know. So it's new for us. And I think maybe at the root of what we sometimes call procrastination is the fear of actually finding and living our liberation. Because who are we when we literally are the kings and queens of this earth? When the world needs to bow to us, when we don't come with our victim stories, who are we?
Yeah.
Let's be that people. Let's make sure that I'm doing what I can within my little time so that the lineage after me can walk higher, stand on the mountain, and say and do what they need to do. I pray for that. I do that. I devote myself to that every day.
I love that. A couple of questions from the audience, but this is another one that my sister posted to me. You're talking about Buntu. Yeah. On Ubuntu, if you can define it, but also it's been co-opted. People are bringing it into the capitalist economical space. They're bringing it into the education space. So they're co-opting the African cultural space, economic capital space, all the spaces. They're bringing Ubuntu in it. Can you speak about that, and can you relate? Because Ubuntu is not capitalism. Ubuntu is not, it's not that. Anyway, can you please speak to that?
And just to add context, let me give a specific issue so that you can see what we're talking about, right? There's a person that's claiming to be doing Ubuntu science in many ways.
Yeah,
like she breaks it down, right? But one of the things that she talks about is they're going to go into the ocean and they're going to take out water, and out of that water they're going to have organisms, and they're going to put those organisms in databases for ownership purposes to know what we have in the ocean. When I confront that as that's not Ubuntu, it is Ubuntu does not seek ownership. Ubuntu does not seek control of the ocean. Ubuntu does not disrupt the ocean. Ubuntu does not put the ocean in databases. It lets it be. So please, brother, please, Baba Buntu, speak to this.
No, thank you for the question. I think let me add this to the topic. I hate how Ubuntu has been commercialized and whitewashed and become this notion that Africans are just smiling and happy and nice and human, and that's the beauty of Africa. Come on, nonsense, absolute nonsense. Ubuntu really speaks to Buntu, the part of the word that is NTU, Buntu, which is the cosmic force that some may call God, some may call the center of the universe, the power that creates us.
I love you, Mary.
Within you. Yeah, let me not go deeper into that, but that power is also within you, meaning you are connected to that power. You might be in denial of it, you might have put other layers on top of it, but as an African, that power exists within you. And when you tap into that power, you realize that you are part of a people, and that your ability to call yourself a person, a man, a woman, an elder, and what, is because of those who have poured into you. Yes, those who have given birth to you, but those that you've met on your way, those who have blessed you, those who have even given you horrible experiences. You learn something from that. And all of that becomes what should make you respectful to another person. Because when I see you, I see an aspect of myself. So before I start cursing you out and before I'm starting being nasty to you, I realize that even if I don't know you and even if I don't understand what you're doing, as I'm finding you doing something I don't like, let me ask what that is. Let me seek information, because at some future point, I might need you. You might come back in my life in some other shape or form. And now if I cast you out and I called you names, there's no way you can help me. You're not going to be willing. So I need to treat you as a person who is part of me. So what I want for myself, I need to want for you first. But of course, this only works really when you are in a communal relationship with a people that you know are also living by the same code. So for many, it's not safe in their environment to go out and try to see themselves in everyone who's walking past them, because some of those people want to take advantage of you. Some of them are looking for a weak point to sneak in and do something horrible to you. And that's a very difficult duality to live with, because you're supposed to culturally see a god and a goddess in the person you meet. But at the same time, you also know that I can't just open my door. It's 10 o'clock at night. You can't just come into my house. I can't just walk down this road and just think, no, I'm part of Ubuntu, so nothing's going to happen. You know that's not going to work. So I think we need to, at least for a while, until we can fix this and repair this, live with that sense of duality. So how I do that, when I engage with you, I normally have, I like to think good things about people, even if I know that I shouldn't always do that, but I like to give people a benefit of doubt. So there's a way I engage with you to kind of check. There's certain ground values I'm looking for. And based on what I then find, I make an assumption that obviously is not the whole regiment or the whole report on who you really are, but it gives me some clues about whether I can continue to invite you closer, work with you, come closer to you. And if I'm still not sure, then I'm still going to put some tests to our relation to see if you really are who you say you are, because we know that people can say a whole lot of things and it's not necessarily who they are. So I want to protect that value. I must say, in my own life, I have been hurt by having that value. I have done things that I later on felt was mistaken and naive choices. But the bigger picture is that it has also blessed me. It has created a huge sense of familyhood, communal experiences, and belonging. That if I had decided that, no, I'm not going to trust you because you probably are like this. No, I don't like people from this part of the country because they're probably like that, I would have missed out on so much. So in the bigger picture, I'm glad that I was able to find that space within myself. It has enriched me greatly. And I think there isn't just one way to walk with this in the world, because we are in different places, we have different experiences. So at least I think I can motivate you to start opening up and protect a space that really speaks to the Ubuntu, your coexistence with other Africans beyond nation borders, beyond nationality, language, and birthplace, beyond language, religion, and political persuasion. Yes, those things might matter in the conversations we have and the work we're going to do, but that cannot be the first frontier. That cannot be the first frontier. And I want to say this lastly. When we as Africans have lost the interest, and I find that a lot here in Africa, and that's why it has become like that. Some people literally are switched off when they see an African who they can literally understand is from a different country. There's no need to have a conversation. There's no need to come closer. There's no need, because you are just one of those Africans. And it's not only here in South Africa. My wife says this. My wife is South African. She says this. She loves African clothing. She loves that now. But in her younger life, she would look at people from other countries and say, oh, yeah, I think that woman maybe is Nigerian, and just turn away. It has nothing to do with me. And the way she would break that down now is the conditioning she went through to not see, oh, but this is a sister with a different experience. This is a woman who carries herself differently than I do. How come? How come she's not timid? How come she's not dressing down so that she's not looked at? How come she's inviting the world to actually look at her? What is that about? So if anyone can relate to that, come on. This is not the time to sit and hide and not reach out. The time you see somebody who looks slightly different than you, maybe is from a different space, it is your obligation to go and introduce yourself. Go and talk. Go and find out, who are you? What are you doing here? Can I talk to you? Let's do that. Let's be closer together.
And then,
thank you, my brother.
Quickly, there's also the understanding of Yurugu, and I'm not sure about Buntu. I'm not sure if you've read the book Yurugu by Mama Marimba Ani, where she identifies how whiteness moves, right, and what it really is. And if you're operating under Ubuntu, because it is our cultural principle, we cannot not operate under Ubuntu. It is who we are. And why do we say that, Baba Buntu? Because of that untu, mundo. That's Kikamba. That says the same word in Kikamba, mundo. Because of that, you cannot detach from Ubuntu as an African person. So, but how do you operate under Ubuntu in this society where you've learned that a certain people, a certain group, a certain ethnicity is moving against yours and seems to never retreat from that and will never retreat from that personality and that cultural way of being? So in Ubuntu, you have to understand that you must protect this, because I am because of these many others. And if this is threatening these many others, we have to figure out how to move to remove this threat. That's Ubuntu as well.
True.
Yeah.
True.
If
Absolutely.
miseducation is happening, where you're understanding, you're being taught things through education that are exploitative, going into the ocean, taking from the ocean, putting databases, recording, like putting your information in spaces that are not safe, you practicing Ubuntu must understand, I cannot take this on as a way of being, whether it's making me money or not. So, and just to let you know, Baba Buntu, I know you mentioned before about how we move with our people and what you describe is grace essentially, is I'm not giving grace to people who are moving like that, especially if they know better. People who are corrupting our principles and our culture because we've been so destroyed culturally. I have to come as a warrior in defense and in attack mode. I will not give you grace. And I will have to do it in that space where you have dirtied the culture so that anyone else who was infected while there can see what the path is and can get out from that state of infection. So unfortunately, Baba Buntu, go ahead.
Sister, can I just add to that? What I didn't explain, you are bringing it in so beautifully here. Ubuntu is also a code of ethics and a law in African sense, meaning that if you break Ubuntu, when you come to invade us, we can't do TRC by Ubuntu. We can't do truth and reconciliation. We need to deal with you. You need to be removed. What you stole needs to be taken back. That's what Ubuntu tells us. So let's not frame Ubuntu as this forever kindness. When you hurt me, and I can see that it's by intention, it's not by mistake, there's a repercussion for that. And now you're not dealing just with me. Remember, I said that when you see me, you must see the God in me. Now you're dealing with God. Now you're dealing with God. And his wrath shall come upon you. So you understand? Now you don't tread very carefully. Tread very carefully. Because you have upset the African gods, the African goddesses, and things cannot go well when you have done that. So that is also Ubuntu. We must not cosmetically remove that.
Thank you, my brother, man. Times are fast spent. So just a couple of questions and we can round this up, yeah? The first question, I'm just posting it up here. It says, how do we as diasporans get our own communities involved in reclaiming our identities and cultures that we have been removed from?
Okay, so I hope I don't sound cheeky and disrespectful when I say that, but I think I understand the underlying challenge in the question. There might not be so many people around you. It might not be so easy to know where to start. But I think in these online times, you can find communities that are on a similar path. And maybe you want to start within, let's say you are from Trinidad. You want to start in, that would be your main site. You want to start within Trinidad. But maybe there's a group in Barbados, or maybe there's a group in Jamaica, maybe there's a group in Haiti. Like you can also sit in other groups to learn how they are doing it. It doesn't have to be exactly what you want to do in the beginning. But you learn with other people, and then you transpose some of those skills, some of those ways, and you interpret it into a new context. So I think that's number one. Reach out, find your community, find like-minded people. And I think, imagine, so I'm going back to Trinidad. If you are based in Trinidad, how do other people who are thinking like you in Trinidad find you? Because maybe they are also asking the same question and you are not identifiable. They don't know that you are interested in doing this. How do they find you? How would they be inspired by what you post or say or talk about? I think these days we can start programs. I think beyond, Emerging Alkebulan is a very good example of this. This didn't start because there was a whole lot of funding. This didn't start because there was money in it. This didn't start because it was just a smooth running to do it. It's hard work behind this. It's sacrifices. It's family members who now got less of you because you are dedicating yourself to this. It's friends who don't understand why you're always busy, why you're always doing this thing. You never come through anymore. So you need to also, you need to allow it to cost something. There's other things that maybe you like doing that you need to do less if you want to be intentional about creating a space that many people, let's be honest, are also a bit scared of. Maybe in this conversation, we make this look easy. It's not easy. Some people have decided not to be our friends anymore because we are too much. Some people don't know how to relate to us because they feel we are too hardcore, too militant, always talking about things. They are tired of that. And I just say, okay, you know what? Thank you for raising your flag. Now I know I don't have to invest so much in our relation. It's a sad thing that you're not interested, but this is not just something I do for a hobby. This is my life. So find your people and bring those people around you, because maybe you are the leader. You're looking for one, but maybe the leadership sits with you.
Brilliant one. I would say I love that.
Right, Oladele. This is not a hobby. This is our being.
This is us. This is what we do. This is our living.
Ubuntu. This is
Yeah.
Ubuntu. Come on.
Okay, the final question here, my brother. The last one here, and then yeah. How do we teach young men to be great stewards and protectors of the land we share?
So I think the answer to that depends on where you sit in equation to that question, because are you owning land? Are you part of a land community? And if you're not, it might be difficult. I mean, you can start with workshops. There's a lot of information online that you can absorb to understand what it means, even spiritual and cultural wisdom that you can learn about the connection with the land. So I think open yourself up to learning first, so that when you approach people and sit with people who can learn from you, you actually have more than one perspective. I think I'm a bit bored with leaders who only pump one perspective. I like leaders who can see things from different. They can have a standpoint. They can say, this is where I see it. But there's also a way to see it like this. There's some people who say that they see it more through that lens. I think that speaks to maturity. Because if I come across, no, you have to understand, it's like this and it's like that. I'm only saying that only those of you who understand my narrow lens are the ones who can really make it. And I don't think knowledge works like that. And that's what African culture allows us, that we can sit with slightly different opinions, slightly different approaches, slightly different main priorities, and still working towards the same goal. It doesn't separate us. So, and if you own land and if you have access to land, then my question would just be, what are you waiting for? Because there are people out there who want to learn. And I think as and everybody here who has done similar work will know what I'm talking about. When you start with 20, soon enough that will become 10. That soon will become 5. And you will be upset and you feel, but I'm failing, nothing is working. No, you need 5 strong people rather than 18 a little bit strong. So accept and be happy that 5 people, that's a lot in the world where we live with our deficits. So don't count so much. The moment you can teach one, when we say each one teach one, that you remember that teaching one person is also teaching many people around that person. Because that person here, Ubuntu connections comes in again. When you inspire one person, that person will go back to their home and inspire people there. They will go out and inspire other people. So don't look down on what you are doing. Don't just say that I want to do 100,000. Be happy with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you know that this is how revolutions start. So let's connect with the land.
Thank you very much. And guys, like, I agree with you. And it takes small steps. If you guys, like my brother said, if you know the effort and the work we put into doing this, but you have to be fully committed to want to do this. If you know about this, you can't do it. Because based on everything we've talked about today, I can't tell you. Okay. Finally, my brother, for people, if people want to reach you, talk about your educational program, the platforms that you do it, and then your platform so people can reach you if you want to reach out to you, please.
Right. So I am available on most social media platforms with the handle at Dr. Baba Buntu. You can find me on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. And feel free to inbox me questions or ways to connect, ways to collaborate. I'm always willing to share from what we have done and always interested to know about other people and communities that are out there. I myself come from a place of, for a very long time, being the only one I knew who was willing to go as hard as I did. And I didn't have people around me who supported me or chanted me on. So I know the importance also of finding people of like mind, people who can push you, people who can inspire you, people who can motivate you. And this journey has allowed me many, many opportunities where I can do that in other people's lives. And it has also blessed me with many people who have done that for me. So I'm more than willing to do that for other people as well. So connect. Let me hear from you.
Okay. And what about your platform? The what's it called?
Shabaka.
So Ebukhosini Solutions. That's the organization. Ebukhosini means royalty. Ebukhosinisolutions.co.za. That's our website. We are also on Facebook with our Ebukhosini platform there. You can also connect with us. We want to be a community of practice. We have now been working for 25 years. We do a number of programs. We do also an online program. but we do a lot of programs directly in communities, in villages, in rural areas, and in urban areas as well, especially with young people. And if you are in South Africa and interested to know more about how you can connect with us, please also find me or find Ebukhosini and get in touch. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you very much, my brother. Absolutely fantastic. So, my brother, we really appreciate the time.
One more time, that website, so that I can share it, just the full spelling of it.
Okay, let me write it.
Yes, please.
Where do I write?
You can put it in the chat, the private chat.
In the private chat. Oh, the public chat is okay too.
But I don't see how I can write.
So in front of you, to your left, something that says private chat. Yes.
I see.
Yes,
I see.
okay.
I'll write it down. Okay.
And guys, thank you all for being part of this. And this is what we do. You know what we do. It's about educating, but not just educating. It's also each one teach one, and taking solutions away from here to make it practical. Because nobody's going to do the work for us. Mm-hmm. Once you got to that kind of a consciousness, know that you become responsible, you become accountable. And once you know better, you got to teach other people. So, and this is basically why we do what we're doing. It's about empowering each other to have the solutions and the information for us to move and do what we need to do. Mm-hmm. So, guys, okay, it's coming up now. Nduku's just going to post.
I'm gonna do it here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I think we'll round up here, guys. So we really appreciate you, my brother. Nduku, any final comment from you, my sister?
You give yours while I type this in. I'll give mine after you're done.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm basically said it. You know, let's just keep working, guys. Let's keep working. It's not easy. It's no joke. But once you got to that conscious level, it means responsibility. It means you cannot go back to doing what you used to do before. You need to start moving forward and start walking that walk and talking that talk. And it's about action. And that's basically that's what we keep doing. So yeah, that's all I've got to say for the next time. Thank you very much, guys. Nduku.
The work is not easy. Do not expect it to be easy. We've gone through Ma'afa for so many years, and there's an intentional effort to stop us from returning to who we are. It will not be easy. No one should expect it to be easy. So because of that understanding, and with that understanding, and I am glad my brother, our elder has reminded us of that, when we create these spaces of teaching and remembering, and even now as I say this, I'm remembering the spaces where I was taught and where I remembered who I am, this was not there. And I remember pointing out it wasn't there and being kicked out of the space. We must provide the healing structure as well. So what does that mean? And Nyashanka, you were in the chat and we said something that triggered you, right? I spoke of masculinity in women that is becoming toxic and is not good for us. It triggered you because we women as well, African women, are being attacked because of our strong voices, and those are being called masculine, right? It's a nuanced conversation. So my job is to say to you, I hear you, sister, right? I hear you, but this is not what we meant. This is what we meant, right? That understanding, but also maybe while we're sitting to have conversation, we start with meditation, we end with meditation. Maybe we introduce exercise, because exercise is great, by the way, for those of you who don't know, for healing. It introduces endorphins that help you literally heal and take away stress. Maybe we introduce walks in the woods where we are sitting with animals. Maybe we introduce gardening as a healing project. So as we build these places of re-educating and decolonizing, we also must bring in those structures, dancing with each other, literal dancing, the actual dance, not the life dance. So this is a call to action to all of us to listen. My partner, I am live on broadcast. They can all hear you clearing your throat. Bye.
Okay, sis. Finally, guys, please subscribe to our channels. Kumbukeni, please subscribe. The Emerging Alkebulan, please help us share these podcasts. We're here to educate. We're here to awaken. We're here to decolonize our minds. Please help us share. Once again, Thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.